Hello, hello. Welcome back to New Housewife Cooks. Today we are going to be making sourdough bread. And I know what you're thinking. That is what they used to do in the pioneer ages. Well, no longer. We're going to make one in the year 2026, and I'm going to show you how to do it. It is a very hurry up and wait kind of recipe, but it's easy once you get going and you know what to do. Just because it takes a long time doesn't mean it's complicated. So let's go through the ingredients. The most important thing we have is our active starter. So if you can see, this little line right here is where it started. It's where we started this morning. I fed this starter around 8 a.m. and it has since risen a few inches. You can also tell that it is ready to go with these tiny little bubbles that you see inside, which tells you that your starter is active and ready to be used. Other ingredients that we have are salt, unbleached flour, and water. Special tools we're going to need is a digital scale that measures in grams. And if you have one, a bread whisk. If you don't have a bread whisk, it's okay. You can just use a fork. The bread whisk just makes your life easier. So let's get started. So first step is to place our bowl on the scale and tare out the weight of the bowl. Tearing just means that you're canceling out whatever is currently on the scale so that you can then add more weight and you don't have to do the calculations and subtractions. Okay. I do have a short explaining what you need to feed in your starter in order to get it to become active. So if you haven't checked that out, go ahead and do that. But we're going to put in 250 grams of our active starter. After we have our 250 grams, we're going to go tare it again and pour in 725 grams of warm water. And do you see? And you can see that the active starter is floating, and that is a good sign. That means that your starter has enough bubbles in it that it's causing it to float, which means that it's ready to go. Okay, next we are going to use our bread whisk and mix the water and the active starter together. It's okay if you still see chunks. All right, so it should look pretty milky like that. Next, we're going to do our salt. And you can see that I removed the bowl with our mixture and I'm placing a much smaller bowl on here. It's just easier to weigh out your salt in a smaller bowl compared to just dumping it into the large bowl, and then you don't have the mistake of over pouring like too much salt. So in this small bowl, we're going to do 25 grams of salt. Okay. And then that is going to go into this mixture. And then we're going to mix that. All right, so we have mixed up our salt into our mixture. You can see that I have a good amount of starter still not blended, but it's okay. Everything will work out after we put in the flour. So next, we're going to put in 1,000 grams of flour into our mixture. And don't forget, so we're going to put the big bowl back onto the digital scale, and I'm going to tare out the whole weight of everything that's on the scale right now. So that way I can add my 1,000 grams. I'm out. Good thing I have more. This is the brand that I use for my bread flour. They are not sponsoring, but I would love it if they could. But they are a great brand if you are making bread products. I'm just a little baby YouTuber. I don't get any sponsorships, but that's okay. This is just for fun. And what I'm doing is just pouring I had a little over 1,000 grams, and my friends and family make fun of me because I like to be really exact when I make my bread. Because bread is like a science. It should be exact in most cases. Okay. See, I'm already... So now we are all done with the scale, and we're going to use our bread whisk. And I like to start with mixing simply the center of the flour and the water mixture. And then from there, I kind of work my way to the sides and I work them into the center while turning the bowl. And you can see that the flour is becoming more and more incorporated into the water and the starter mixture. And then from there, you start to really put some elbow grease in there and make sure that you get the flour as mixed in as possible. See, like that's too dry still, so I like to really get in there. Here, I'll bring you closer. See, I'm really putting in elbow grease, and I like to scrape down the sides. And what we're doing is creating a shaggy dough. So it's not going to be that beautiful, perfect bread dough or pizza dough that you'd expect. It's going to look like this, and it's going to be very sticky in the beginning, but as we move on to our next phase, it'll become more and more smooth. Just take off all the excess off of my bread whisk. Like I said, if you don't have a bread whisk, it's okay. You just can use a fork. My dad uses a spoon, I think, but it's just everyone's preference. And now that it is mixed, we are all done with our bread whisk. So I'm going to throw it in the sink. So with our current dough, we are just going to put a cloth over top, just like that, and let it rest for 1 hour. During this time, it is in the autolyzing phase, which is just meaning that the flour is becoming hydrated. So it just helps us with our dough process. So yeah, I'll see you in 1 hour. It has been 1 hour, so it is time for our next phase of sourdough making, which is stretch and folds. So this is what our dough is looking like right now. And over the next 2 hours, we're going to be doing 4 sets of stretch and folds. And it is exactly how it sounds. We're going to, using our hands, we're going to scoop in to the side and stretch and fold over. Do you see how extremely sticky it is? That is normal. Now we're going to rotate the bowl a teeny bit, a couple inches, stretch and fold. Okay, keep turning it, stretch and fold. And this process helps to strengthen our dough. And I like to go around at least twice to stretch and fold the dough. Stretch. I do a little wiggle sometimes just to get more of a stretch and fold. Let's do one more. Stretch and fold. Okay, so you can see that it looks like that for now. And we are going to repeat this process 3 more times. So I like to mark it down so I don't forget how many stretch and folds I've done in the like up to this point. And we're going to do these every 30 minutes. So I'll see you in 30. It's been 30 minutes. Oh, I also forgot to say for the first set of stretch and folds that I cover it in between every stretch and fold session. So we're going to take off our towel and just simply repeat the same process. So you're going to reach into the side, pull up, and fold over. And then rotate the bowl a couple inches. And already there is a huge difference between the first set of stretch and folds and this second set. The dough is getting stronger, it's becoming less sticky, and it's becoming what we want it to be when we're doing our shaping process much later. I'm just going to do one set. Oop, I tore that one a little bit. You don't want to stretch too much. There we go. That is good. That's what we're looking like. And I will see you again for the third set in 30 minutes. All right, it has been another 30 minutes. So let's continue with our stretch and folds. You will find that as the stretch and folds continue, that you'll find yourself doing less and less stretch and folding because the dough is getting stronger. Look at that. I can bring the whole thing out of the bowl now. So it is very strong and hardly any is getting on my hands. So that's what we want. Okay. Another 30 minutes and then we will do our final stretch and fold. We are on to our final set of stretch and folds. This is the fourth one, and the bread or the dough is very elastic, very strong, and not as sticky as when we first started. Okay, so now our dough looks like this. And the next step is to let it sit covered for 2 hours for bulk fermentation. So that means the dough is going to increase by about 50 to 75%. And then from there, we're going to go into our shaping. So I'll see you in 2 hours. Back. It has been 2 hours and now we are ready for the shaping process. So let's take a look at our dough. It has definitely increased in size. And I have a silicone mat here that I'm just going to sprinkle a light dusting of flour on. Special tool that we have is a bench scraper. I am going to use it right now to help scrape the dough out of the bowl and onto our silicone mat. If you don't have a bench scraper, that is perfectly fine. You could use a spatula, your hand, a credit card, just something that'll help you simply scrape the sides of your dough or of your bowl. Okay, came out. So it is enormous, but please remember, this is going to be 2 loaves of bread. So what we're going to do is cut them into 2 loaves right now. So it is roughly a center. I'm going to cut and pull at the same time. so they don't stick to each other. There is still going to be some stickiness. You can see that is sticking to the bench scraper, and that's why I have my flour over here so that I can just give it a light dust. Because it will stick, but it's not as nearly as sticky as like before we started our stretch and folds. It also depends on the time of year. It also depends on how humid your location is. So I live in Virginia, so it's pretty humid here. So I have to keep that in mind when I'm making bread. Like there is a ton of bubbles in this. So like if you're going to let it bulk ferment, don't go over 2 hours if you live in an overly humid environment and an overly humid kitchen, because it's going to rise too much. So from here, we have our two doughs. We're going to work with this one first. And what I'm doing is I'm going to simply pick it up like a t-shirt, like as if I'm holding a t-shirt. And you see how it's stretching out more and more. And now it's a little rectangle. And I'm going to fold it into thirds. So fold in, fold in. It's a little sticky on the bottom. And I turn it sideways, and then I'm going to simply roll. Okay? And here's the tricky part. This is when you're going to go out and then drag it in. Okay? It's a little sticky. Just give it a light dust. I'm going to go out and go in. And go out and back in. And what you're doing is creating surface tension over the top of your dough. That's what's going to give you that crust that everybody loves in an artisanal loaf of sourdough. So out, in, out, in. And you're just tucking in the bottom of your dough. And then once you finish, you can do a little this number. And that's our first dough shaped. So let's repeat the process with our second dough. Our second loaf, I mean. Okay. Put some flour down. Pick it up like a t-shirt. Pick it up like a t-shirt. You're just doing this until you get like a good like rectangle. This is also, we're not going to do this today, but this is also when is a good time to do inclusions. Like if you wanted to put ingredients into your dough, like cheese or herbs, this is the time to do that. There are a few other times, but this is the time that I like to do that, but we're not going to do that today. Okay. I'm going to do it one more time. Perfect. Okay. So now we're going to fold it into thirds. We're going to roll it up. And we're going to do the same process. Out, in, out, in, out, in, out, in, until you see that all the like ugly bits have been tucked under. And then just give it one of these numbers. And that's it. So we have our dough. They are both shaped. And if you've noticed that this one is starting to like deflate just a teeny bit, that's okay, because I'm going to set a timer for 20 minutes from now, and we are going to come back and do the same thing again. We're going to reshape them to help them remember their shape more. And then I'll show you what we do next. 20 minutes. All right, it has been 20 minutes. So now we are going to do the exact same things. And you'll notice that I have two new additions here. These are called bannetons, and they are little baskets meant for holding your dough while they cold proof in the fridge. If you don't have a banneton, it's okay. I didn't have a banneton when I first started sourdough. You can simply just use a bowl with a dishcloth inside of it, and that'll work well. Okay. But the most important thing is that if you have a banneton or not, still flour the insides where the cloth is going to sit, so that way your dough doesn't stick to the inside of the banneton. All right, so let's start with this first one. I'm going to lay down a little bit more flour, and I'm going to pick it up and flip it upside down so that the bottom is facing up. And I'm going to repeat the same exact process. So pick it up, shape it like, or hold it like a t-shirt, plop it down until you have a rough looking rectangle. Fold it into thirds, roll it up, and we're going to do that in-out process. So out, in, out, in. Oh, it keeps sticking. The bottom keeps sticking. In. Okay. A little sticky at the bottom there. Okay. Out, in, out, in. And you can see there's a lot of big bubbles on the dough. And that is a result of the temperature of where it's been proving. So now we have our newly shaped dough that we've shaped twice now. And we're going to flip it upside down in our hands and place it upside down in the banneton. Okay. And then I have these little shower cap looking covers for the banneton. So that one is fully done and ready for the fridge. So now we're going to move on to our second one. If you don't have these little covers, that's okay. You can use another dish towel, or you can use like a shower cap, just something to cover it while it's in the fridge. All right, so I just flipped it upside down again and pick it up, hold it like a t-shirt. Till it makes a rough rectangle. And then we're going to fold it into thirds and roll it. And then out, in, out, in, out, in. And just keep repeating that process until all the sides have been fully tucked under. Okay, so it should look like that. Have our banneton, flip it upside down into the banneton. And then we're going to cover these. Okay, so now we have 2 loaves of bread, and they are going to go into the fridge for 2+ hours. And I say 2+ because it's 2 hours minimum to cold proof. So it's 7:14 p.m. So the earliest I can pull them out of the fridge would be like 9:15. A lot of people like to cold proof them overnight, which is what I like to do. Sometimes I'll bake one loaf today and I'll bake the next loaf in the morning tomorrow. So that's probably what I'm going to do. So I'm going to pop these 2 in the fridge and then bake one of them tonight. Good morning. It is the next day. I thought I was going to bake bread last night, but I was too tired. But that's okay. It can sit in your fridge for 24 hours. So it's not a big deal if you go more than 2 hours. So now it is time to bake. I have my oven preheated at 500 degrees, and inside the oven is my cast iron with a lid preheating. So we're going to get our loaf of bread. We're going to bake one at a time so we can get that ready. Here's our bread from overnight. We have two more special tools. We have a bread sling, but if you don't have one, you can easily just use parchment paper that is oven safe, and a bread lame. So I need everyone to stop what they're doing and listen to me. This is extremely sharp. Please, please, please do not cut yourself. Thank you for listening to my TED Talk. Okay, so we're going to open up our beautiful loaf from yesterday. The easiest way to put your loaf of bread in the center of your bread sling is to flip your bread sling over upside down onto your banneton and then flip. And look at that. Perfectly in the center. And then using our very sharp bread lame, we're going to score our bread. I normally make a grain of wheat on my loaf, but you can do anything as long as you do one deep cut, because that's going to help to let out the steam for your bread so that way it can expand and the insides won't get all gummy. So that's all I do. Okay, and now this is ready to go. We have our Dutch oven, and I've taken off the lid. Everything is extremely hot. It's been cooking for 500 degrees. I'm going to pick up our bread, put it inside. Some people do ice cubes. I don't do that. Put the lid on top. And then we're going to take our whole loaf and pop it back into the oven. So now that it's in our oven, we're going to set the timer for 35 minutes. And then in 35 minutes, we're going to take the lid off, bump down the heat, and then brown the crust for 10 minutes. So I'll see you in 35. So our timer just went off. So what I'm going to do is bump down the heat to 425. And I'm going to remove the lid off our loaf. And now it's going to brown for an additional 10 minutes. And then we'll have bread. Voila! Look at that. Look at that loaf. It's really dark, but it looks good. It's a little dark, but that's okay. And then a good way to test that it is fully cooked through is by flipping it over. And you hear the hollowness. Hello? Anybody home? And that's how you know. So we are not going to cut this open for 1 hour minimum. And that's because it's still cooking and we don't want to let that steam out because it'll become gummy if we do that. We're going to let this cool for 1 hour minimum. Editing Jen is back. I forgot to record an outro. So I really hope you enjoyed watching, and please subscribe and we'll see you next time. Bye.